So the last episode, 69, we recorded on 420, and today, somehow, is Star Wars Day. Happy Star Wars Day, everybody.
Yay.
Yay.
I mean, that joke was funny when I was about 8 years old, and it's still funny now, is it?
I've never been a big Star Wars guy.
Oh.
I'm not like an anti-Star Wars guy at all. I'll enjoy me a little Star Wars, but I just haven't really been into much other than The Mandalorian, which is fantastic.
But who shot first? That's the question.
We all know who shot first. Han shot first. Come on.
Well, of course, joining me today, we have Chris. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
Brent,
Hello.
who you all know from Linux Unplugged. And we also have from our Discord, for our community spotlight this episode, FuzzyMistborn. Hello, Fuzzy.
Hello.
Nice to catch up with you again. We met you at the meetup, didn't we?
Yes, you did.
And you were the guy with the Steam Deck that we were all very jealous of, and the electric car, and we'll get into all that business in just a little bit. But I think Chris has got an update about his new show, first of all.
Oh, really? You're going to... Oh, thanks, Alex. Yeah, well, actually, I wanted to mention it here on the show because we are kicking off a total website rebuild project. And Alex, you joined me with Brent and Wes on the last episode. And we talked about what we want to do and how we kind of want to build the new website. And we're taking in ideas, and we've launched some GitHub projects around it. And so all of the details are in Office Hours 3. So if you go to officehours.hair/3, then you can listen to that episode and hear what Alex and I had to say about what we want to do with the new JB website. And we're really looking for input because we have to have it done by the end of summer, because Scale Engine, who we've been with for like 12, 13 years, I was just looking, they are no longer in the WordPress biz.
Nothing like a deadline, is there?
Yeah, and so they're getting out of it by the end of summer. And so we got to get the website moved, and we want to rebuild it, and we want to self-host it, of course. So officehours.hair, help us like figure it out, join the conversation. We'll figure it out together.
There's a link in the show notes to a very active GitHub issue, actually, where there's lots of people throwing out lots of different ideas about how we can self-host different stacks, you know, anything from Ghost to GitLab to Grav to Hugo, you know, all those sorts of things. Like Chris says, there's an Office Hours episode where we all discuss the various requirements that we have, I suppose, and trying to build like a podcast network website, you know, where there are, how many shows do you have? Like 6, 8?
Yeah, 6 shows, I guess. 5 active shows. Then you have extras, so 6.
Yeah, and then you got a bunch of archive shows too, which you want to present to people. And then there's about, I don't know, 1 million guests on all the shows that you need to update all their various content. There's a lot. And you think, well, we could design a whole database around this. You could design a whole CMS, you know, if you're not careful. So we're trying to be cognizant of the fact that people will be giving up their free time to help us and all the rest of that. So if you've got any opinions, any thoughts, please head over to the Jupiter Broadcasting GitHub organization and give us your feedback in the issue number 8, linked in the show notes.
I'm excited about what we might build. We've gotten some really good ideas already, things we hadn't even considered, like maybe the ability for certain community members to update episode pages and show notes with things that were either missed or maybe links that die. There's all kinds of ideas that are floating around right there. So we're just kicking off the conversation, but we also need to move kind of quick. It's one of those things.
I can't tell you the number of times as a listener of a various podcast, I go to the show notes. I'm like, what was that thing? And they didn't put it in the show notes. And I know that we are guilty of that too, because I have listeners write in and tell me that we're guilty of it.
Yeah.
And it would be great if they could, you know, submit their feedback. Now, a few episodes ago, we had the orange one on for our very first community member spotlight. And today we're joined by FuzzyMistborn. Hello, Fuzzy.
Hello.
Yeah, so you're drinking a tasty beverage over there. What do you have?
I have a beer from a local brewery that is a triple golden ale.
I see both Brent and our guest have a beer. I don't have a beer. What went wrong
Actually,
here?
this is a hopped cider. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay.
So you and I have been talking for many months, probably over a year at this point in the Discord. I'd say we're pretty good friends in there. We've been talking about so many different projects and, you know, EVs, for example, so many things in common. I thought it would be great to get you on and talk about various things. So let's start with that electric car, shall we? I know it's not self-hosted related, but I'm really curious about how your journey with the IONIQ 5 is going.
I've had it now for about a month, and so far it's been fantastic. Of course, the first 2 weeks of it, I go up to my parents who live about 4 hours away, and I drive down to Raleigh, which is about 8 hours. So I put about 2,000 miles on the car in about 2 weeks.
It's the only way to do it. Proper shakedown test.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That was definitely an experience. So I definitely got to try out, you know, the rapid charging and seeing how all that works.
How was that? How was the charging? Because it was down, what, I-95?
Yes, pretty much 95 most of the way. The first time I did it, on my way down, I was kind of ultra conservative and charged wherever I possibly could. But on the way back, it was only about 2 charges. A little bit more comfortable in what the car could do, and I knew kind of what the range of the vehicle would be when it was saying, you've got 30% left. I knew I've got X number of miles.
You were feeling a little more adventurous at that point, I see.
Well, whilst you were busy in that delicious old RV with Nixie Pixel, Chris, I was given a little spin round the block in the IONIQ, and Fuzzy put his foot down a couple of times. That was fun. I was pinned back in my seat for sure.
Yes, that still brings a smile to my face every time I drive it. I throw it in sport mode for a couple of minutes just to accelerate and just like, pew!
That's like the boost noise.
Pew, pew! Now I want to know, are you collecting, or do you see any possibilities to collect metrics? You know where I go with this kind of thing. I start thinking, let's collect some data.
There is a Home Assistant integration, but it's honestly not super great, but that's not a fault of the developers. I mean, there's some stuff missing that I want to see added, but the major issue just is that Hyundai limits you to about 30 API calls a day.
That's not very many.
No. So I mean, the developer actually has put in, there's blackout times at night where from you can customize it, but I think the default is 10 p.m. to 6 or 7 a.m. It doesn't make any calls whatsoever just to try and preserve them for you. But yeah, it's kind of limited in what you can do. So what I do use is I use a better route planner, which is great for planning trips because it shows you, basically you type in, it's like Google Maps for electric vehicles. And you say I'm coming from here and I'm going to here, going down to Raleigh, and it'll say, okay, and here's the car I have. And it'll basically figure out, okay, you're starting at this percentage battery, the weather's going to be this, the wind's going to be this. So therefore it can figure out, okay, you need to stop here, here, and here and charge this amount to get where you're going. And as part of one of the ways I improve that is you can get little ODB2 Bluetooth low energy devices and plug them into your ODB2 port in your car. And a better route planner can integrate with that and pull the state of charge off the car. So therefore it'll update in real time. So for example, when I left to get down to Raleigh the first time, I said I was going to arrive, my first destination with 10% charge. I got there with 30, and I could see it counting back up as it, based on the real time telemetry it was getting.
That's a legit feature. I didn't even think about it. I didn't even realize that electric cars had ODB2 ports. I suppose they have to by law, but it just never even crossed my mind. It just seems like such an old, archaic, the whole CAN bus thing just seems so old.
You and I got burned by that automatic thing. Do you remember?
Oh, I loved automatic too, even though they were slurping up all my data, but they tracked every drive that I did in the RV for the first few years. So I had this brilliant heat map of everywhere we had been in the RV. It was great, and it got all my fuel mileage info for me. I'd love to have that again. We've talked about that a little bit on the show, trying to recreate that.
Yeah, there's an app called Torque that I've been trying to play with that might let me kind of upload it into Home Assistant. I couldn't quite get it to work, and I haven't had a chance to go back to it. But that would supposedly let me upload that information directly into Home Assistant and have sensors and data that way. But honestly, I charge the car once a week. On Sunday nights, Home Assistant will ping me if the battery's below, I think 50%. And, I can go and plug it in. It'll charge up overnight in a couple hours. And honestly, I basically, you're only supposed to charge about 80% at any given, you're only supposed to charge 100 if you're actually going to be going somewhere long distance. So usually 80% is enough to get me through the entire week.
That's so cool. So how about a seamless segue? Shall we switch gears?
Oh,
that was questionable.
Top Gear?
Oh, yes, Top Gear. Where's Jeremy? I've been following your blog for a long time at blog.FuzzyMistborn.com, and there's so many posts on there that we could talk about. But there's one in particular which really has my interest peaked right now, and that is the Renovate Bot one. I'm curious to ask you what you're using Renovate Bot for and what your experience has been with it.
So Renovate Bot I have run on my infrastructure Ansible GitHub repo. And basically what it will do is it will go through, I honestly, you can self-host it. I don't. So I don't know how often the publicly hosted one goes through, but it's honestly pretty fast. Maybe in every hour or so it runs. And it basically runs through whatever I tell it to run through, and will tell me, for example, for mine, it'll tell me if there's new Docker images available. for all my Docker Compose stuff, I'll, state, Home Assistant / whatever / what is it, 2022.05.01. And it'll go through and say, oh, well, there's 0.02 available. And it'll create a pull request on the infrastructure repo that I can then go in and say, yes, merge this, or hang on, this is actually a beta, or, oh, no, I'm seeing there are some issues with it, so I don't actually have to merge it until I need to.
So what exactly does it do? It's like a GitOps style way of working, right? It looks at the upstream images and says, there's a new Home Assistant container, and it creates a pull request, right, against your repo, and then what?
Basically, that's it. It creates a pull request. I can see, it basically, you can actually even, you can customize. I don't even honestly scratch the surface of what it can do. You can, go ahead and auto merge, minor update. So if it's like, a 0.01 release, you can tell it just to automatically merge that for you, and save the major revisions for, manual review. Or, it honestly, I barely scratch the surface on what it can do. I know a lot of people use it for maintaining their dependencies for all the different, projects. They'll use it for, and they'll have just Renovate Bot go through and just automatically update and merge a lot of the dependency upgrades.
Now, another post that you have on your blog is your love-hate relationship with drone.io. But before we get there, and because you mentioned Top Gear a moment ago, we do have the Top Gear style leaderboard storage question, which one of our amazing listeners has added to the self-hosted wiki. So what we're going to do is set some rules, right? It's raw storage. How much raw storage do you have on your LAN?
I'm going to maybe cheat a little bit. So I have about 10 terabytes that I store off site with a, external hard drive that I leave in the office, at work. So that way I have, cold storage. So if we include that, it's about 80 terabytes.
But we don't include that because we literally just said on your LAN.
I know, but it's on my LAN for a couple hours a month.
Unless we count Tailscale as the LAN these days. So who knows?
Oh, boy.
What do we think, audience? 70 or 80 terabytes? Let me know in the chat, and we'll submit a pull request to the repo before the end of the show, hopefully.
I need to do a calculation on my end now that we have these new servers in-house, too. There's 2 boxes, and each have 48 terabytes of storage, and then we have 24 terabytes of storage in the old server.
Not to mention then the Bitcoin node has what, 2? Is it 2 we threw in there?
8 terabytes. 8
Was
terabytes. In the Bitcoin node.
Yeah, that was an easy store that you shucked.
Yeah,
well,
and then
we
hid
shucked
in
at
a
the
drawer
spring.
for a year or two.
Right. So I should do the final calculation just so we have it up to date.
All right, so we're going with 80 terabytes then, are we? 80.
That's because everybody likes him in the Discord. That's what's up.
Oh,
thank you,
Jeff
audience.
has 84 terabytes.
Oh.
So that puts you in 4th spot, Fuzzy. Good job.
Yeah, I've got some more sitting in the back bin, but I won't include that.
Well, what you do is when you get it online, you come back on the show, and then you can beat them.
I actually have to get more room in my storage server. I am maxed out.
That's just it. Density is a thing, people.
Hey, man, it's not my problem if you want to be on the winner board or not. It's just not my problem. You just got to do what you got to do.
All right, so should we get back to the drone.io love-hate relationship thing? What's that all about?
I'm actually not an engineer or any kind of technical field. I'm a lawyer by profession, so I sort of dabble in all this for fun. And so I started looking at drone because there were some things that I wanted to automate in terms of building Docker images and some other stuff. And I know GitHub Actions was out there, but this is self-hosted. I want to learn how to do this all myself. So drone is a CI/CD system with continuous integration, continuous deployment, where basically it's very similar to GitHub Actions or Jenkins or some of the other ones that are, I think Circle CI is another one. Basically, you can do anything you can do in a bash script. Like I basically use it to do a bunch of bash commands on some things. It builds a bunch of my Docker images for me. I built one of the recent things I did was I actually started building an Ubuntu server image every week that gets deployed into a Nextcloud. So that way I just have a constantly up-to-date cloud knitted ISO image.
I've had a few issues with drone myself, actually. Like just for no apparent reason, a job that I've set up, the build will stop running automatically for no apparent reason. Like I will push something to my Git instance, the build will detect that it's been pushed, but nothing happens. And I can't figure out exactly quite what's going on there. So I delete the build in drone and then I recreate it and it's fine for a couple of weeks. And then the same thing happens. And it's infuriating, if I'm honest.
Drone is, but the issues I had with it, as I kind of laid out in the post, were, it's really good, but the documentation was pretty poor in some ways. Like the one thing I remember, I was looking to the post again recently, cron jobs. You couldn't tell it a time zone, so therefore it defaulted to GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, and I couldn't figure out how to get it on my time zone, which was annoying. So I had to always think 5 hours difference.
Hey man, I've made a career out of that.
Well, actually, I'm just kind of curious because you did tease a little Home Assistant action there. Can you give us just kind of a rough idea of the Home Assistant setup, what it's running on, and sort of the key things you have it doing for you? Just like a picture.
I run Home Assistant in Docker. It's running on my Proxmox server downstairs in the basement. The main backbone of what I run here is Z-Wave. All my switches are Z-Wave. I have a bunch of sensors that are Z-Wave, though I've started using a lot more Zigbee sensors just because they're cheaper and I found they work a little bit better than the Z-Wave.
Better in what way?
I got these Z-Wave sensors that were for a company called Dome. I think it was the name Dome. And I think they've gone out of business since they made these.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so they work pretty well, but they're also, I think they were about $35 or $40 versus the Zigbee Aquara buttons are like 20. So I have them all over the house because one of the big things I have here is I have all the lights are on automation. So every time motion's detected, with certain parameters are met, the lights will turn on, and then after a set period of time, they'll turn off.
Sure, nice. Did you then, I assume, go through the Z-Wave migration that I have been putting off?
Yes, I did. I am on the Z-Wave JS. I've been on it for probably over a year now.
Oh, rub it in.
Originally, what I had done was because the Z-Wave network rebooting took like 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes sometimes for me to reboot Home Assistant, where it would just sit there spinning and it would take forever for the network to come back up. And so I actually got tired of that to the point where I actually created a separate Home Assistant instance that only ran Z-Wave.
Huh, interesting idea.
And I bridged it with MQTT to my main instance.
And you're still doing it that way now?
No. So I was doing that for a while, and then the Open Z-Wave came out, and I'm like, oh, let me give this a try and see if this is better. And it was. But then obviously that got deprecated and moved on. So I'm like, well, I'm kind of on a dead end here. I've already done the pain once. I might as well change it all. So I upgraded to the Z-Wave JS, and honestly, it's worked brilliantly. There's been a couple of things where, like the lock I have, the Schlage lock, I had to create a couple of sensors to kind of get back some functionality that was default on Open Z-Wave for what guest code, what door codes use. Because one of the things I have is if a door code is used, like if I create a one-time guest code, if it's used, it'll actually delete that code after it's used.
That's great.
That is cool. So
it recycles once a week. I get a Telegram ping saying, here's the new guest code. I can give that out to people if they need to get into my house for whatever reason, and then it'll delete itself.
I would imagine you're probably in pretty good shape too, because I thought I heard today on the live stream that the Z-Wave JS maintainer now works full time for Nebukasa. So they're going to be probably keeping that in pretty good shape.
Yes, I had heard that. I think I'd seen that as well. And I'm actually in the process of building a new house, and so I'm actually going to keep using Z-Wave there for the switches, just because I haven't been able to find any kind of Zigbee equivalent that allows dimming and switches for a reasonable price. I know Innovelli just came out with their blue switches, but they're like $45 a switch. The brand I like is Zeus, or I guess sell by the Smartest Home, and they're about $25 a switch.
Yeah, ZOOZ is the brand. Now, I know that you have some whiz-bang traffic light system to tell your kids it's okay to get up in the morning. Like, as a new parent, I need to absorb this. Tell me.
Yeah, I want to hear about this too.
One of the things that I did that my wife absolutely loves is I have a Raspberry Pi that I installed Volumio on that acts as a sound machine. So it just plays white noise for the kids, and there's a door sensor on the door that when it's closed and the light turns off, it turns on the sound machine. I've gone through different variations of how you turn the sound machine off in the morning, but it'll also automatically turn off in the morning. What I do is actually that's kind of been handy for doing things like the OK to Wake clock, which are useful for toddlers because they obviously can't read a clock yet, but they do know their colors. So my 3-year-old, for a long time, what I do is it used to be an hour, but then he started getting up earlier. So now I've pushed it to about a half hour before he's supposed to wake up. I have a Z-Wave bulb in his room that will turn on red. And that's kind of, he knows it's, if he wakes up, he's not allowed to get out of bed. He still does sometimes, but most of the time he knows if it's red, he's not supposed to get out of bed. When whatever the time actually strikes that he's allowed to wake up, it turns green. The other thing I've done is I have an ESP board running WLED under his bed that also, if he gets out of bed in the middle of the night and the door opens, the light turns on red pretty dim, so that way he can see and, not trip over his feet or, actually get into bed at night. He finds that to be a lot of fun.
That's really cool. I mean, it's pretty cruel of you to keep your kid in their bedroom until midday, but hey.
I wish midday, usually 5 a.m.
I know, yeah.
Speaking of quality of life improvements, like I could see how that would make the entire household just way better instead of this random time thing that many of us have experienced.
It worked well for the first little bit. He goes in phases of obeying it and not, because again, he's 3, so I can't exactly fault him.
Hey, maybe I need to get one of those for my wife.
Well, actually, one of my all-time favorite automations I have is, so I have it on my blog somewhere, but I have 2 pieces of aluminum foil that's over a piece of cardboard, and I have it underneath the bed tied to an ESP32. And when I get into bed at night, the lights all turn off.
Ah, that's great.
That's hilarious.
And if one of us gets out of bed at night, the light turns on dim, again, red, so that way you can see and not trip over all the stuff that's on the floor.
Is this motion? Is it pressure sensing? What's happening?
It's pressure sensitive. So basically, it's when there's enough pressure on the cardboard, it basically pushes through. There's a capacitive, I don't know if it's capacitive or whatever it is, but there's enough of a connection.
It changes the resistive load so that the ESP can pick up that slight difference and trigger based on that.
You nerds.
Honestly, I was shocked at how well it worked. I mean, again, there's Sleep IQ sells like a $200 version of this kind of a thing. I think I put it together for like $50.
Well, Fuzzy, thank you very much for coming on. I think you're going to stick around for the second half of the show. Is there anywhere that, whilst you've got the mic, you'd like to send people?
blog.FuzzyMistborn.com.
Well, very good. And of course on the Discord as well.
Yes, that's probably one of the best ways to get me if you want to talk to me.
Linode.com/SSH. Go there to get $100 in 60-day credit on a new account. And you go there to support this year's show. Linode is the tinkerer's cloud. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could just deploy everything with one click. Like, I was just looking today, and they have a one-click for Pi-hole on Linode. And I started thinking, like, that could be great for my son's laptop. That could be excellent for mobile devices. So if you want to go that route, you can. But if you want to tinker, like I'm saying, like you want to go all the way down to the metal and then like deploy your own custom system, Linode lets you do that. They got guides, they got information on how to do that, and they've got the best support in the business. But if you like performance, they've also got something for you there too. NVMe hard drives, AMD EPYC CPUs, dedicated GPU rigs if you want, 40 gigabit connection to the hypervisors, 11 data centers around the world in strategic places where they are their own ISP. You see what I'm saying? Nobody does it like Linode. And I love their object storage. Their S3 compatible object storage is like my superpower. I use it for all kinds of things. I needed to just test a new RSS format, and I just needed to like have an XML file that was publicly available for like 30 minutes. Like, what was I going to do? Put that on a web server like an animal? No, I put it up on object storage like a gentleman. And of course, their API is great. Their command line client is quick. There's so many things I love about it, but just go try it out for yourself. Best customer support, super fast networking, crazy fast rigs, and a Linux culture that runs deep. That's Linode right there. That's why I choose to use them for 2.5 years now. Everything we've built in the last 2.5 years, I put it up on Linode. Go try it out and get $100 while you support the show. Linode.com/SSH.
Now, today for the show, I thought I'd spin up a Google Analytics alternative called Plausible. This is a lightweight open source web analytics engine. Hold on. I've got a Google, screen on my desk next to me.
Oh, yeah, the assistant.
I think it's grumpy because it's literally just pulled up. It's time to ditch Google Analytics on the screen. It's listening.
It knows now. Now they've logged that.
Absolutely, yes. So I'm in trouble with the big G. But anyway, this Plausible thing doesn't require any user acceptable cookies. You know, that annoying GDPR pop-up thing? It's fully compliant with that, as well as several other things. It's made and hosted in the EU. So let me clarify. There is a hosted version. I'm talking about the self-hosted version, which is just something you can run in a container. I chose to put mine up on Linode, but you could run it at home any way you like. I found the setup process was kind of a pain in the bum.
Oh, really?
Took me about 2 or 3 hours to get through in the end. The reason for that is because to spin up this thing, it's about, I think it's 4 containers as a database. There is it's like a queuing engine, like a Redis style thing called ClickHouse. There's the app itself, and then there's an SMTP relay. So those 4 containers come together to form the app that is Plausible. But of course, their documentation doesn't quite tell you all the little tricks you need to do and all the environment variables you need to specify to get it up and running properly, which is super annoying. The Docker Compose script that they have actually linked in their documentation is about 2 years old. And so I was going through following this thing and looking at the version numbers, and then I thought, right, I'll just go and check the latest tag in Docker Hub. Yeah, 2 years old, completely out of date, hasn't been touched. So then I went to the Real Orange One's GitHub and looked at what he's doing, because I know he runs Plausible too. And his GitHub repo combined with their documentation, I eventually got it up and running. And once I did, I was super duper happy with this thing. You know, I had to embed a little JavaScript header in each web page that I wanted to track. And within a minute or two, I could see people showing up straight away. So my MKDocs website at perfectmediaserver.com, my Ghost blog at blog.ktz.me. I even put self-hosted.show on there as well, just as a test. And I got to say, it's pretty flawless.
Are you getting real-time numbers?
Yep.
Ah, I love that. Okay, so you took a couple hours to get up and running. And now once it's up, is it something that you're putting like on the public web? How is that working? Is it behind a firewall? And can you give access to others?
So there's a few different things you can do. By default, it's limited to authenticated users, to the admin user that you create and any other users that you create in the app itself. But when you and I were talking before the show, I thought, it'd be cool if I could just show Chris what I'm doing here. And so for the self-hosted.show thing, I went into the site settings for that specific site. And there's a whole list of things I can do. So I can not only make this publicly available, I've just switched this on. So I'm actually going to put this in the chat room so that the live stream can go and have a look at the analytics that we pulled up today on self-hosted.show. So that's a public version that we can do, but I can also give specific users like an obfuscated link. So I can say, right, I want to share this specific thing with this email address, and I'm going to give them a password, and it expires after a certain length of time. Can you imagine doing that for like a sponsor or something?
Right. That is a fantastic feature just from like working with somebody for a short period of time. The one thing that I found when you gave me the link and I kind of looked around in there is it doesn't seem like it goes as deep maybe as Google Analytics does. Like Google Analytics, you could just keep drilling down and down and down and getting more specifics. This is a little higher level. Like it tells you everything you need to know: your unique visitors, your total page views, your bounce rate, and the average visit duration, and of course your top sources and your top pages, and the locations in which they come from, and the types of devices they use. So it's all what you need. It's nothing's really missing, and it'd be fine for what we use. But it did seem like maybe not quite as detailed as the Goog stuff might be. Do you agree with that?
That's the price you pay for not having surveillance capitalism be the driver of everything.
Right.
I'm not trying to get political, but I am going to have a little bit of a rant about the death of democracy and social media and everything in the last 6 to 10 years. And I could go off the rails, but I'm not going to here. I'm going to keep it on topic. And, that's one of the things I like about Plausible, actually, is that because it's so lightweight and because it's so privacy friendly and privacy focused, I turned off Privacy Badger to make it work on my web browser. But I had a look at the trackers and it was very minimal what it was doing compared to what Google Analytics does. I really like that. I mean, for me, that's a feature.
I completely agree. We stopped using Google Analytics just because I'm creeped out by Google, but, I didn't really replace it with anything. So something that we could run ourselves on our own infrastructure and, use that data just so we get an idea of maybe how our website's performing. Because, one of the things you can figure out is maybe there's something wrong with the site. Maybe there's a design issue. There's insights that you miss, and, your webpage for online businesses is the front of your store. So that's pretty great. And I guess they do have a pay version too as well, right? So if you wanted to, you could go all in on their hosted version. Doesn't look like it's that expensive. Unless you get like millions of views, then it gets up to like $90 a month if you get 2 million views.
Yeah, I suppose compared to Google's low price of free, but you are the product, it's expensive. But I'd rather support companies that are willing to give their software away like this than Google sometimes. Now, Fuzzy, I know that you use a different one. Was it called Umami or something?
Yeah, I think it's pronounced Umami. I think the orange one on Discord was talking about Plausible at one point, so I was like, oh, I kind of want to get away from Google too, like everybody does who self-hosts. And so I went and tried to spin it up, and I ran into the same exact problem you did, where I try and avoid apps that require more than like 2 containers. I just don't like ones that are that complicated. I just feel like it defeats the purpose of Docker. Like I remember one time I tried to spin up a Unify thing and it was literally like 10 containers. I'm like, no. So Umami is only 2 containers. There's the database portion of it that I can run in MariaDB, and then there's the actual Umami collection thing. And from looking at what you posted on Discord and the website, Umami looks pretty much exactly the same. I don't know in terms of like features and the dashboard and everything, but like I can see the same exact things where I can see what pages got hit, where the source was from, the country, desktop versus laptop versus tablet, all that. I can see the same thing. So if you're looking for something a little bit simpler to set up, it might be a decent option.
I'll put a link to Umami in the show notes.
Now, Alex, when you were showing me earlier today, Plausible in your excitedness, you were describing the different containers and how, at first, maybe once you're getting into it, it's a little bit more complex to get set up. But you did say that was actually a really nice engineering decision for scalability. Can you talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the way in which, say, GitLab is architected, right? They provide a big bastard container that is like 6 gigs of RAM, does 8 million processes, and completely is antithetical to the entire purpose of containers and microservices, right? It's one big monolith that they deploy. And if you want to spin up an extra worker or anything like that, like it's just a mess. And I really hate that way of doing things. And the Unify controller and Plex is kind of the same, right? It has a database built into it. And actually, if you're thinking about it, it would be nice if Plex had a separate database container that lives somewhere else that I could back up and version independently of Plex itself. And that's one of the things I liked about Plausible, is that because it has so many containers, you've got that queuing engine, the ClickHouse thing I talked about, that operates in a similar kind of space to Redis, that basically takes all the requests in real time. Its only job is to listen and receive stuff. And then Plausible has workers that goes and processes those requests in real time. Now, a poorly architected application would only have one container doing that, and it would ingest all of that stuff into the primary container. And then when that queue or that buffer or whatever it is gets full, the container would start to slow down. It might have a memory leak. It might crash, all that kind of stuff. But by having the queue somewhere else, you leave Plausible itself as this controlled environment, and it's able to not fall into that same trap as a lot of other applications do. Also, the data store being an external Postgres database, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, no, I don't have an issue with databases being separate. I don't know. When I start seeing that many containers, it just becomes frustrating for me to have to manage. And
no, I get it. It puts you off, doesn't it? You sort of look at this thing and you go, I can grok and understand this in 3 seconds if it's 1 or 2 containers. But if it starts to get to 3 or 4 or 5 or more, you're like, I'll do it next time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's sort of my line too. My last question on it, Alex, really is, did you notice much in terms of load time difference on the sites after you put it on there? Because you toss a little bit of JavaScript in the header essentially, and then you're off to the races. Did you try benchmarking or at least refresh and see if it seemed any slower? Because I've also experienced that. I used to use a locally hosted analytics software that actually slowed the website down, so we had to bail on it.
I personally didn't notice any difference, and that's totally anecdotal, but I run Privacy Badger anyway, so I don't have a lot of Google Analytics and a lot of JavaScript running anyway. What I will say is on the Plausible website, take this with a grain of salt, they say that their script is 45 times smaller than Google Analytics. So
smaller tends to be faster.
Yeah, and they reckon that because it's so much smaller, a site with 10,000 monthly visitors will save 4.5 kilos of CO2 emissions per year simply by switching to Plausible. So do your bit for the planet, people.
Right. Drop Google to save the planet. Tailscale.com/self-hosted. Go there to get a free personal account for up to 20 devices, and you support the show. Tailscale is a zero-config VPN. It installs on any device, manages your firewall rules, gets you going in just seconds from anywhere. Devices connect directly to each other using WireGuard's noise protocol. So you build a mesh network using the best VPN security in the business. It really changes the game. I have to say, too, I was really excited this morning to see that they just raised $100 million in Series B funding. And here's what they said about it. Why'd they do this? Because they're paranoid, they say. This isn't their first rodeo, and we don't know where the economy or the market might go. And we don't want to be pressured into juicing our growth numbers beyond where they belong. We don't want to put revenue ahead of quality. Man, it really shows in their product, too. You know, you have a flat network where you get a static IP address for every device you care about. You can assign them a DNS name. It's always connected. They're always encrypted. It even works with double carrier NAT. It is fantastic.
And I opened a support ticket with them recently. I exceeded my number of subnet routers that I'm allowed. They have a soft limit of 1 per free account. I had 3, so 3 times what the soft limit is. And it says you are encouraged to upgrade your account if you exceed for a length of time. These are only soft limits. Don't worry, we won't enforce them, but you're encouraged to upgrade. So I sent in a support ticket saying, hey, which tier should I be on? I kind of want to give you some money because I think you're awesome. And they wrote back and said, no, it's okay. Just tell people about us. It's cool.
They've also written a blog post about how they've built a sustainable infrastructure. So listeners of our show might be really interested in that. And it goes into their whole philosophy about making this thing work for the long haul. And I am so grateful because it's changed the way I work, and it changes the way I do tech support with my family. It makes it when I'm remote, it makes it so seamless now. Go check it out and support the show and get it for free for up to 20 devices. It's tailscale.com/self-hosted.
Alex, we've been having a few adventures. Why don't you tell us a story?
Well, I took Brent down to my basement the other day. He still has all his limbs. It's okay. I think they're all still intact anyway, because one of my hard drives has been dropping off the SATA bus this week. I didn't know why. And so we went down and took a look at this thing. And I think I did this maybe 2 or 3 months ago. I took the cable out and then put the cable back in. And it worked perfectly for another 2 to 3 months.
Oh, yeah, that's what I've been doing with my machine here.
You guys are awful.
Right. Well, hey, look, sometimes it ain't stupid if it works, Brent.
Yeah, but it is almost guaranteed to only work for a short period of time.
No, not at all. Not with cables. In my experience, cables can be finicky little buggers.
You need better ones.
Maybe there's a little vibration, something got loose.
Exactly. I learned long ago to put SATA cables with the little clips on because the ones without clips do vibrate out.
I think my issue is likely I'm not running enough hard drives.
Yeah. I think there's about 10 spinning drives in this server. It's quite a few. So there's a lot of vibration. So realistically, it could be a cable. It could be some crosstalk issue with all those SATA cables running together. They're plugged into an HBA card, which is a SAS cable. So it's 4 SATA cables going into one SAS plug on an HBA card. So I was thinking maybe it's a bad cable. So I ordered a new cable off Amazon, put it in, and then...
You ordered the short one.
Realized it was too short and thought, I'll just go and grab a SATA cable just to tie us over. And then found in the drawer that I actually already had the correct cable.
Oh, I've done that. Yep. I've done that for sure.
So anyway, I connected up the drive and it wouldn't mount. Proxmox was going crazy with, XFS errors. And I was like, uh-oh, here we go. Smart wasn't showing me anything, but I've seen this before and it usually means the end of the drive in my experience. So brought the drive upstairs, took it out the server, brought it upstairs, connected it to my little diagnostic station I've got behind me over here. And ran, was it XFS repair?
Yes, it was.
I think. And that rebuilt the log or I don't know, something like that.
The journal.
Yeah, that's it. It took a good 5-10 minutes to do that, which was a bit squeaky bum time. And then it just mounted perfectly. And, I was listening to the drive the whole time it was on the table next to me for any audible noises. I've heard a drive clicking before. And it seemed fine. It was running cool to the touch. It was behaving properly with the testing that I was doing. So I thought, okay, let's put it back in the basement server. and so far so good.
Oh, I thought this was going somewhere completely different.
I mean, it could.
That'll be the next episode.
RAID is not a backup, people. This is true.
Alex, I'm curious what you think the issue was and what you think the issue might be, considering it still seems a little kind of like it may happen again.
Seems fine now. I actually ran a bajillion SnapRAID checks and fixes and syncs and rebuilds and everything I could throw at this drive to stress it without actually wiping it and doing like a bad blocks run or something, just to try and poke the bee's nest a little bit. And for me, I think it's going to be fine. But originally, I suspect there was either an issue with the power supply cable, and maybe it sort of the voltage dipped slightly and it dropped off the bus a little bit in the middle of a write transaction or something, and that corrupted the log. Or the data cable was bad, which I have replaced now. So, in terms of variables and stuff like that, if something goes wrong with it again, I will know it's not the cable. I will know it's the drive. Now, this is a shucked drive originally, and it's still within warranty. So actually, part of me is kind of curious just to send it in to Western Digital and see what they say.
Did you keep the shucked bits?
No, there is some I forget the name of it. It's like Magnuson Moss Act or something that you can quote to them.
And they have to fix it either way.
Yeah, because they can't prove that my shucking broke the whatever it is inside the drive.
That is shockingly pro-consumer.
I know, right? It's almost like we're in Europe.
Chris has a drive that he shucked, but he definitely modified the drive by breaking the pin off, which was quite a clever
Well,
solution.
now that is physical damage. I don't do that. I do the captain tape, or I just snip the 3-volt rail on the power supply cable.
I wanted it fixed forever. And let's be honest, I'm never sending it in. I'm never going to do that.
We also didn't have any tape.
Yeah, we did look for the tape. And I'm like, screw this, break.
Now, Alex, I'm curious, what did you end up doing with the cable?
Which one? The faulty cable?
Yes, the faulty one. Did you just put it back in your drawer with the others?
I think I might have done.
No. Alex.
Who knows? It's a mystery box of fun next time there's a drive problem.
Yeah, right?
So here's my solution to the 3.3. I'm showing the live stream on camera. I just cut the 3-volt cable in my SATA. Like I have these, like, you plug one SATA cable in here, power cable in, and then you get 4 like power plugs here. And if you just cut the 3-volt wire here, this one, then you don't have to worry about captain tape or, physically damaging your drives. You just run them all off these.
There must be some voltage going through those. Could they arc or something? Do you do anything to...
There's some electrical tape on it. But I mean, it's 3 volts.
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's 3 volts.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's, at most, it's going to be like a little tingle.
I don't mean for you. I just wondered, electronics.
Maybe I should try licking it next time. See what happens.
The old D-cell test.
Yeah.
No, I think it's more fun just to leave it uncapped, and that way, next time you're rooting around in the case, just a little, when you're reaching in there.
I've got a question for you guys with wedding rings and stuff. Like, whenever I'm digging around in a PC that's on, I will take my wedding ring off, because there was one time at the Apple Store where I didn't, and I actually shorted out a customer's motherboard. It hurt quite a bit too.
I have never taken my wedding ring off to do any hardware work. The watch sometimes I will if I'm rooting around deep inside the case and physically can't reach wherever I am. But I've never had it arcing from my ring.
I have to take off the watch. I don't like the watch on the wrist when the edge of the case, and I'm rooting around in there and I'm smacking the watch up against those sharp edges, scratches it all up. Same when I'm working on a project in the RV. I have to take the watch off. I actually don't wear the ring though anymore. I just sort of gave up on that. My whole body size changes all the time. And so I'd go from a ring that was too tight to a ring that was too loose. This is also why I became a suspenders guy.
See, I learned my lesson. My parents used to have those old school Christmas lights, and I was always the one putting up the Christmas lights. And there were enough times where I broke the bulb and was trying to get it out, and I stupidly did not unplug the strand, and I shocked myself more times than I care to admit.
Well, it's one of those things that once it happens, you watch out for the rest of your life, I imagine, right?
Yep, it definitely is. I think the thing that zapped me was one of the MagSafe 19-volt things.
Oh, gosh.
Like a laptop. And yeah, it stung quite a bit. And actually, it took a little bit out of my wedding ring. There's a little notch in it where you can just see.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's your near miss,
I had to fill out accident report forms and all. They sent me home.
And that's just an awkward conversation when you come home, too. It's I kind of damaged my wedding ring, honey.
Yeah. Oh, well.
We got some boosts into the show last week. We got some people boosting both good and bad things into the show. Rubik Man.
Rubik Man.
All right, Rubik Man.
I think.
Says, my wife and I are moving to a new apartment soon. We have permission from the landlord to install a camera pointed at the parking lot. Can you recommend one that works with Home Assistant for a decent price? Now, he doesn't tell us what his connectivity situation is. So what are your thoughts, Alex?
You could just get a dog and point that at the car park, you know? That would bark quite a bit. I mean, the obvious choice, despite all their flaws, really, the Wise cams.
Yeah, that's what I was probably going to say, too. We're actually going to have our next boost here that kind of makes them even more appealing. Sexy Pants boosted in for 210 sats. Said this dropped on Reddit yesterday. It supports USB Ethernet adapters, tail scale, and it runs an RTMP server. It'll even make you tacos. Well, maybe not that. But it's essentially a series of Wise hacks that I think make these cameras even more compelling, especially when you combine it with something like WiseBridge. So I have a link in the show notes to a GitHub repo that lets you essentially root the devices and get more out of them.
Can you imagine the possibilities of running tail scale on the camera itself? That's cool.
That opens up a whole new kind of it's a whole new world, as they say. The other cameras, as far as just connect them to Wi-Fi and they have decent apps that also work with Home Assistant, is the Logi Circle. However, I've had mixed results with that, but that's also another option. If you have a recommendation for a cheap portable camera that's easy to power and easy to get connected, send us a boost and let us know.
I actually have a good one. The Eufy cams, I've actually been a huge fan of. They are basically the same price as the Wise ones. They come built in with RTSP. They're running throughout my house. I have about 6 of them. I have the doorbell, and they work just fine.
And I also hear in the HomeKit community that they work really well with HomeKit setup as well. Haven't tried it, but that does sound good.
Sir Lurks-a-Lot wrote in with 2 boosts. The first one reads, autonomous spinning blades? Ugh, homeowner's liability insurance coverage or not, I would be uneasy about this robo-mower running unsupervised, which is all too likely, I fear. PSA. Lawnmowers are not toys and can cause serious harm to both critters and children. Never mind stupid adults. This ain't a silly vacuum. Just think bloody toes and see how that sits before deploying. Situations vary, of course. Just remain aware that unplanned lawn intrusions and obstacles do happen.
I mean, that's actually a fair point. So last week we talked about a robot lawnmower, and none of us actually mentioned the safety angle of it. However, I think it's just kind of assumed that people would be careful with this kind of thing. But then Lurks-a-Lot had another boost for us, too.
They continue, oh, so I finally saw the video of this open mower project. I imagined something much larger and dangerous from a DIY project. While I still believe in safety first, this does not conjure quite the nightmare scenarios I had imagined when I hadn't seen the thing yet.
Yeah, it's more like the size of a vacuum. There was speaking of those little robot vacuums, a local town here in Washington, Bellevue, a homeowner called the cops because they thought somebody had broken into their house. A burglar was in the house with them and they were panicked. Turned out robot vacuum wasn't actually a burglar.
Oh, gosh.
I'm actually thinking of, so I'm as I said, getting a new house, and it's going to have almost an acre of land. I'm actually looking at some of these robo mowers just because I don't want to have to mow that much land.
Seriously.
You're just going to have to get a lawn tractor, dude, and just be done with it. Just admit it.
I don't want one because they basically cost the same. They're $2,500 and the robo mowers are $2,500 and they'll install it for me for free.
Has anyone told you that you get to sit on top of a giant engine and go rum, 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 rum as you go along? They're so much fun.
Says the guy who is an EV. Yeah, no.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, you can get electric ones too.
Yeah, those are even more expensive. But yeah, no, I actually been looking at these robo mowers and I actually want one because they actually do have a safety thing where if you pick them up, they actually shuts off.
Ah, sure. Okay. That's good to know too. Yeah, I'd be looking at one too. Crashmaster18 wrote in, said he really liked the live format we did last week, having multiple people on too, hopes it sticks. And he also likes the idea of the open mower. He hopes that we'll give him an update if one of us picks one up.
It'll turn off if you do that.
Right. Don't pick one up.
And the final bit of feedback for this week, Cast Peeland writes in with 3,690 sats. Thanks for the show.
Nice and simple.
Well, thank you, Cast. Thank you very much.
Do you think 3,690 sats mean something? Because sometimes that they mean something.
There's a 69 in there.
I think it's 3 + 3 = 6 + 3 = 9.
Oh, could be a math thing. To me, I was thinking the GTX graphics, like a video card kind of thing. But
oh, could be.
I don't know. All right, we did get an email in. JVP just wanted to give us a review on his end of Frigate, the NVR created by Bearded Tech in our community. And he said, I did hear about it here on the show. I have to say the Docker Compose setup was super easy. I have 5 PoE 4K cameras that come with an advertised on-camera person detection. I'm using this on an older laptop with a Core i7, and it actually runs quite well. Frigate not only outperforms the stupid phone home app that these cameras came with, but with the Home Assistant integration, it's really cool, and I'm looking forward to making some integrations with lights soon. Plus, I can view my cameras through the HA app, Home Assistant app, outside my house without sharing another service or having to open another port. So there you go. He says, I'm about to block these cameras from the internet, and I'll just use it all with Frigate Plus. So Frigate NVR is a project our community member Bearded Tech is working on, and these cameras, well, JVP didn't give us the model. So JVP, you'll have to write back and tell us what the model is, because maybe those are the ones Fuzzy's looking for.
Now, as always, I want to give a big thanks to our site reliability engineers, our subscribers. You do make this show possible over at selfhosted.show/SRE. We've also got a network-wide membership at jupiter.party as well to support not only this show, but all the other JB fine shows like Linux Unplugged, Linux Action News, and Coda Radio.
Absolutely. And of course, you can always send us a boost with a Podcasting 2.0 app. Go get a new podcast app at newpodcastapps.com. Go get more Brentley at linuxunplugged.com, and catch Fuzzy on our Discord at selfhosted.show/Discord. And I'm at Chris LAS on the Twitter.
I'm over there at IONIQ Badger for the time being, but who knows what that crazy spaceman is going to do with it. We'll have to see on that one.
Maybe we'll finally get a Mastodon user out of you yet. Maybe?
Oh, maybe.
Probably not.
Maybe, baby. One other plug that I meant to do, I almost forgot, is we're actually going to be starting a new initiative on the off weeks of self-hosted. So this show is coming out on the 6th of May, so it'll be the
6th plus 7th?
What's 6 plus 7?
13.
That's my birthday! I'm not doing it on my birthday! Oh, damn
Do
it.
it the day before!
Oh, well.
Do it on the day we do it live. We do the show live on Wednesdays now, every other week.
Now, I wanted to talk about a new initiative that we're going to be doing in between the live shows that we've started doing now. So that is, we're going to take a look at the awesome self-hosted list. As a community, I think we can help improve this thing, right? And we'll take a look at a specific category. We'll hang out on the live stream for an hour or two and just try out some of these apps as a group and figure out which ones work, which ones don't work, which links are dead, which applications aren't on that list that should be, that kind of stuff. And eventually try and make the awesome self-hosted list awesome again, you know?
Awesomer.
Yeah, maybe we should get little hats with that on, little red hats with make self-hosted awesome list great again or something. I don't know.
I have some notes on that idea. Maybe we'll refine that.
There's probably some merchandise in that somewhere, but we'll see. I think that'll probably do us for the show today. So thanks for listening, everybody. That was selfhosted.show/70.